The Galactic Council had ruled the stars for 40,000 years. They were 12 ancient races who had conquered space when humans still lived in caves. They built cities on 1,000 worlds. They commanded fleets that could burn planets to ash. They believed themselves to be gods. High Arbiter Xalen Voss sat upon his throne in the great chamber of the Citadel. The Citadel was a space station as large as a small moon. It floated at the center of Council space, a symbol of power that had stood for 10,000 years. The walls were made of living crystal that sang soft music. The floor was polished stone from a world that no longer existed. Everything about the chamber said one thing: we are eternal. Xalen Voss was old, even by the standards of his people. The Vethkai lived for thousands of years, and he had seen 3,000 of them pass. His body was made of purple crystal that shifted and changed with his moods. Right now, it was calm and still. He had no reason to be worried. He had never had a reason to be worried. Around him sat the representatives of the other 11 races. The Scorn were insect-like creatures with hive minds. They thought as one and spoke as one. The Luminari were beings of pure energy, glowing shapes that floated above their seats. The Morvan were giants with 4 arms and skin like stone. Each race was ancient. Each race was powerful. Together, they controlled everything. A young officer entered the chamber. He was Vethkai like Xalen Voss, but his crystal body was pale blue with nervousness. He bowed low before the council. "High Arbiter," he said, "our sensors have detected a new warp signature." Xalen Voss did not move. New species discovered warp travel every few centuries. It was nothing special. They would be contacted, evaluated, and brought into the Protectorate. That was how things worked. That was how things had always worked. "Show me," Xalen Voss said. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a small blue planet circling a yellow star. The planet was covered in water and green land. It looked fragile, weak. "They call themselves humans," the officer said. "They come from this world. They call it Earth." The Scorn Hive Queen leaned forward. Her many eyes studied the image. "How long have they had warp technology?" "Less than 50 years, Great Queen." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. 50 years was nothing. The council races had spent millions of years perfecting their ships. These humans were infants, taking their first steps. Their biology is unusual, the officer continued. They live for less than 100 years. They are soft and fragile. They require constant food and water. They cannot survive in extreme temperatures. One of the Luminari flickered with what might have been laughter. "Such short lives. How do they accomplish anything?" "They reproduce quickly," the officer said. "And they are persistent." Xalen Voss waved a crystal hand. "Enough. They are a young species. We will send them the standard terms. They will join the Protectorate and pay tribute. This matter is closed." The council agreed. A diplomatic ship was sent to Earth. It carried a simple message: submit to the council. Provide genetic samples for the archive. Pay yearly tribute, and you will be protected. Refuse, and you will be managed. The council expected gratitude. Every species before had accepted these terms. Some had wept with joy at being allowed to join the great civilization of the stars. Others had simply known they had no choice. The council was too powerful to refuse. The diplomatic ship arrived at Earth 3 months later. The humans met them in orbit with a small fleet of their own ships. The council ambassador noted that the human vessels were ugly and rough. They looked like they had been built in a hurry. They probably had been. The ambassador delivered his message to a group of human leaders. He explained the terms carefully, using simple words so the primitive beings could understand. He told them about the glory of the Protectorate. He told them about the peace and prosperity that awaited them. He told them what would happen if they refused. The humans listened quietly. When the ambassador finished, they asked for time to discuss the offer. The ambassador agreed. He was certain they would accept. What choice did they have? 3 days later, a human came aboard the diplomatic ship. She was a small woman with dark hair and dark eyes. Her name was Captain Yara Chen, and she served as humanity's official representative. She moved with a confidence that the ambassador found strange. Did she not understand how small her people were? "We have discussed your offer," Captain Chen said. "The United Earth Assembly has reached a decision." "Excellent," the ambassador replied. "I will prepare the documents for your submission." Captain Chen smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. We are not submitting to anyone. The ambassador's translator must have malfunctioned. I do not understand. Let me be clear, Chen said. Earth will not join your protectorate. We will not pay tribute. We will not give you genetic samples. We will not bow to the Galactic Concil. The ambassador stood frozen. This had never happened before. No species had ever refused. You cannot refuse. The Council rules this region of space. You have no choice. We always have a choice, Chen replied. And we choose freedom. Then you choose death, the ambassador said, his voice finally showing anger. The Council will send fleets. They will burn your cities. They will enslave your people. You cannot stand against us. Captain Chen stepped closer to the ambassador. She was small, barely reaching his chest, but somehow she seemed larger in that moment. Her eyes were hard and cold. Your council has ruled for 40,000 years, she said. You have forgotten what it means to struggle. You have forgotten what it means to fight. You have forgotten what it means to be hungry, to be desperate, to have nothing to lose. She paused. We have not forgotten. We remember every war, every famine, every struggle for survival. It is written in our bones. She turned to leave, then stopped at the door. Tell your council something for me. Tell them that humanity sends its regards, and tell them that if they want our submission, they are welcome to come and take it. The ambassador returned to the citadel with this message. He delivered Captain Chen's words exactly as she had spoken them. The council chamber fell silent. High Arbiter Zelun Voss sat on his throne and felt something he had not felt in centuries. It took him a moment to recognize the emotion. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was curiosity. These humans were foolish. They were doomed. But there was something in their defiance that he found interesting. They truly believed they could stand against the council. They truly believed they had a chance. Zelun Voss almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Send the third fleet, he commanded. 300 ships should be more than enough to teach these humans their place. We will blockade their system and starve them until they beg for mercy. The council agreed. The third fleet was dispatched. It was commanded by Admiral Torvash, a legendary Vethkai warrior who had never lost a battle. No one in the council chamber doubted the outcome. The humans would resist for a time, then they would break. Every species broke eventually. It was simply a matter of pressure. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Admiral Torvash stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. Around him, 300 council warships moved through the darkness of space. They were beautiful vessels, each one a masterpiece of engineering that had taken centuries to perfect. Their hulls gleamed with silver light. Their weapons could crack planets in half. Torvash had commanded fleets for 800 years. He had put down rebellions on a dozen worlds. He had never lost a single ship in combat. His purple crystal body glowed with confidence as he watched the stars blur past. Admiral, his sensor officer reported. We will arrive at the human system in 6 hours. Torvash nodded. 6 hours, and this foolish rebellion would end. He had studied the reports on humans. They were weak creatures, soft bodies, short lives. Their ships were primitive things held together with metal and hope. This would not be a battle. It would be a lesson. Prepare the surrender broadcast, Torvash ordered. We will give them one chance to submit before we begin the blockade. The third fleet dropped out of warp near the edge of the human solar system. Torvash expected to see a small defensive force, perhaps a few dozen ships at most. He expected to see fear. What he saw instead made his crystal body flicker with confusion. The human fleet was hiding. His sensors detected ships behind moons, inside asteroid fields, scattered across the entire system. They were not gathered in a defensive formation. They were spread out like hunters waiting in tall grass. Admiral, the sensor officer said, his voice uncertain. I am detecting over 200 human vessels. 200? Torvash could not hide his surprise. The reports said humans had fewer than 50 ships. That is impossible. They have only had warp technology for 50 years. They have been busy, the officer replied quietly. Torvash pushed his confusion aside. Numbers meant nothing. Human ships were small and weak. His fleet could destroy 200 of them without breaking formation. Broadcast the surrender message. Tell them they have 1 hour to submit. The message was sent. The hour passed. The humans did not respond. Very well, Torvash said. All ships, advance in standard formation. We will push them back to their homeworld and establish the blockade. The Third Fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Rows of silver ships glided through space like a wall of steel. They had done this 1,000 times before. They knew exactly how this would go. They were wrong. The first attack came from behind. 30 human ships burst from the shadow of a gas giant, moving at speeds that should have been impossible. They did not announce themselves. They did not demand surrender. They simply opened fire. Torvash watched in shock as 3 of his ships exploded in balls of flame. The human weapons were crude, simple kinetic rounds and nuclear missiles, but they hit hard, and they hit fast. "Return fire," he commanded. "Destroy those ships." His fleet turned to engage, but the human ships were already gone. They had fired their weapons and fled back into the darkness before the Council guns could track them. It was cowardly. It was dishonorable. It was effective. The second attack came from a different direction. More human ships emerged from an asteroid field, launching swarms of missiles before disappearing again. 2 more Council vessels fell. "They are not fighting properly," Torvash growled. "They are attacking and running like animals." His second-in-command, a young Vethkai named Sereth, spoke carefully. "Admiral, I believe that is their strategy. They do not want a direct battle. They want to wear us down." "Impossible. No fleet can win a war by running away." But the humans kept running, and they kept attacking. Every time Torvash tried to bring his fleet into proper formation, human ships would strike from a new direction. They came from moons, from asteroids, from the darkness of space itself. They hit hard and vanished like ghosts. Hours passed. The Third Fleet lost ship after ship. Council vessels built over centuries were destroyed by crude human weapons in seconds. Torvash could not understand it. His ships were better in every way. His crews were better trained. His weapons were more powerful. But the humans did not care about power. They cared about results. The final battle happened near the 4th planet, a giant ball of swirling gas. Torvash had gathered what remained of his fleet, 150 ships, into a tight formation. He was determined to catch these humans and crush them properly. The humans gave him his wish. They came from everywhere at once. Ships poured out of the gas giant's moons, out of its rings, out of the clouds themselves. There were hundreds of them, more than Torvash had ever imagined. They swarmed around the Council fleet like insects attacking a wounded animal. "All ships, fire at will," Torvash screamed. His flagship shook as human missiles struck its shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. "Drive them back," but there were too many. Human ships died by the dozen, but more kept coming. They crashed into Council vessels, fired missiles at point-blank range, sacrificed themselves to take down larger targets. They fought like creatures with nothing to lose. A human ship rammed directly into the Eternal Victory. The impact tore through 3 decks. Fires broke out across the flagship. Torvash's crystal body cracked from the force. "Admiral," Sereth called out. "We must retreat. The fleet is lost." Torvash looked at the screens. His beautiful silver ships were burning. Over 200 had been destroyed. The humans were still coming. "Sound the retreat," he whispered. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. "All surviving ships, emergency warp. Fall back to Council space." 47 ships escaped. The rest were left behind as burning wreckage floating in the darkness. Admiral Torvash did not survive the retreat. His injuries were too severe. He died on the bridge of his broken flagship, unable to understand what had happened. 800 years of victory, ended by creatures who lived for less than a century. When the news reached the Citadel, the Council fell into chaos. The Scorn Hive Queens screamed for revenge. The Luminari flickered with fear they could not hide. The Morven demanded to know how this was possible. High Arbiter Zellenvoss sat in silence as his fellow Council members shouted around him. He was thinking about Captain Yara Chen. He was thinking about her words. "You have forgotten what it means to struggle." The Council had not lost a battle in 8,000 years. They had forgotten what defeat felt like. They had forgotten that they could be hurt. Now they remembered. "We must respond with overwhelming force," the Scorn Queen declared. "Send every fleet we have. Burn their world to ash. Make an example of them." The other Council members agreed. Plans were made for the greatest military action in 10,000 years. Every race would contribute ships. Every reserve would be called up. They would descend upon the humans with fire and fury. Zellenvoss approved the plan. But deep in his ancient mind, a small voice, whispered a warning. These humans had defeated the Third Fleet with primitive technology and desperate courage. What would they do when they saw the full might of the Council coming for them? The answer, Zelunvos feared, would teach the Council lessons they had forgotten long ago. Across the galaxy, on the bridge of a battered human cruiser, Fleet Admiral Yara Chen received reports from the battle. They had won, but the cost was high. Over 100 human ships had been destroyed. Thousands of brave men and women were dead. They will come back, her second-in-command said. With everything they have. Chen nodded. She had expected this. From the moment she had laughed at the Council's demands, she had known what would follow. Then we had better be ready. She looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the most powerful civilization in the galaxy was preparing to destroy her people. They had thousands of ships. They had technology humanity could barely understand. They had 40,000 years of experience. But humanity had something the Council had lost. They had hunger. They had desperation. They had the knowledge that every day might be their last. Send a message to all human colonies, Chen ordered. Tell them the Council is coming. Tell them to prepare for war. The message spread across human space. And on 100 worlds, factories began to build ships. Soldiers began to train. Scientists began to work on new weapons. The Council thought they were sending an army to crush insects. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. The Citadel was quiet in the days after the Third Fleet's destruction. The great halls that once echoed with confidence now whispered with fear. Council members walked past each other without speaking. No one knew what to say. High Arbiter Zelunvos had ordered his intelligence officers to study the humans. He needed to understand how a species so young and so weak had destroyed a fleet that had never known defeat. The reports they brought him changed everything. The first report was about Earth itself. The human homeworld is what we classify as a Category 12 death world, the intelligence officer explained. His crystal body was dim with fear. It has extreme temperature variations. Parts of the planet are frozen solid. Other parts are hot enough to kill most species within minutes. Zelunvos leaned forward. Continue. The planet experiences regular natural disasters. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Massive storms that can level cities. Volcanic eruptions that poison the air, floods that drown entire regions. The officer paused. And the wildlife. High Arbiter, their planet is filled with predators, creatures with fangs and claws and poison. The humans have been fighting for survival since the moment their species existed. The Scorned Queen made a sound of disgust. How did they survive at all? They adapted, the officer said. They learned to hunt the predators. They learned to predict the disasters. They built shelters against the storms, where other species would have died. Humans found a way to live. Zelunvos considered this. The Vethkai homeworld was a peaceful place of crystal forests and gentle rains. His people had evolved in comfort and safety. They had never needed to fight for survival. Tell me about their biology, he ordered. The second report was even more disturbing. Humans are persistence predators, the officer explained. Their bodies are designed for long hunts. They cannot run as fast as most prey animals, but they can run for hours without stopping. They track their prey across vast distances, never giving up, until the animal collapses from exhaustion. They chase animals until the animals die from tiredness? Sareth asked. He had been promoted after Admiral Torvash's death. That seems cruel. It is effective, the officer replied. Humans do not give up. It is built into their nature. When they want something, they keep pursuing it until they get it, or they die trying. The officer brought up another display. It showed the internal structure of a human body. They have redundant systems throughout their biology. 2 kidneys, 2 lungs, a heart that can keep beating even after significant damage. They can survive injuries that would kill members of any council race. They can lose limbs and continue fighting. They can be poisoned and recover. Their bodies are designed to take damage and keep functioning. And their minds? Galunvos asked. That is perhaps the most concerning part. The officer's voice dropped low. Humans experience something called adrenaline. When they are in danger, their bodies release chemicals that make them faster, stronger, and more resistant to pain. Fear does not freeze them. It makes them more dangerous. The council chamber was silent. This was nothing like the species they had conquered before. Those races had been peaceful, civilized, easy to control. Humans were something else entirely. The third report was about human history. Humans have been waging war against each other since before they had writing, the officer said. Images appeared on the display. Battles, explosions, burning cities. They have invented thousands of ways to kill. Every generation improves on the weapons of the previous generation. They have developed nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons. They have fought wars that killed hundreds of millions of their own kind. The luminary representative flickered with horror. They kill their own species? In such numbers? Constantly, the officer confirmed. But here is what matters most. After each war, they learn. They study what worked and what did not. They improve their strategies. They train their soldiers. War is not just something humans do. It is something they excel at. Zalun Voss thought about his own people. The Vethkai had not fought a real war in 8,000 years. Their military was ceremonial. Their officers had never seen true combat. They had forgotten the art of war. The humans had never stopped practicing. There is one more thing, the officer said. He seemed reluctant to continue. We have analyzed their communications, the messages they send to each other, and they know they are outmatched. They know the Council has more ships, more technology, more resources. They know they will probably lose. The officer paused. They are fighting anyway. Sareth shook his head. That makes no sense. Why fight a war you cannot win? Because they are human, the officer replied. Their history is filled with stories of small groups defeating larger enemies. They celebrate these victories. They teach their children that courage and determination can overcome any odds. He looked directly at Zalun Voss. They believe they can win, and that belief makes them dangerous. The reports continued for hours. Each one revealed something new about humanity. They could survive on almost any food. They could adapt to different gravities and atmospheres. They could function without sleep for days when necessary. They formed tight social bonds that made them willing to die for each other. But the detail that disturbed Zalun Voss most was their lifespan. They lived for less than a century, he said slowly. We thought this was a weakness, but it is not, is it? The intelligence officer shook his head. No, High Arbiter. Their short lives make them impatient. They do not wait for problems to solve themselves. They act quickly, sometimes recklessly. They take risks that longer-lived species would never consider. Because they have nothing to lose, Zalun Voss realized. Because they have everything to lose, the officer corrected. Every moment is precious to them. Every day matters. They fight with a desperation that we cannot match because we have forgotten what it means to feel time slipping away. Zalun Voss dismissed his officers and sat alone in the council chamber. The crystal walls sang their soft songs, but he could not find peace in the music. For 40,000 years, the council had believed themselves invincible. They had conquered or absorbed every species they encountered. They had built an empire that spanned a quarter of the galaxy. They had forgotten that they were mortal. The humans remembered. They remembered every day, and that memory gave them strength. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, humanity was preparing for the storm to come. Admiral Yara Chen had established her headquarters on Mars. The red planet had become a fortress, its surface covered with shipyards and weapons factories. Intelligence reports say the Council is mobilizing everything. Her aide reported. Every race, every fleet. Over 10,000 ships. Chen studied the holographic display. 10,000 ships against humanity's 500. It should have been hopeless. Any rational species would surrender. But humans were not rational. They were stubborn. How long until they arrive? She asked. 3 months. Maybe 4. 3 months. It was not enough time to match the Council's numbers. But it might be enough time to prepare some surprises. Chen turned to her senior officers. They were men and women from different nations, different backgrounds, different beliefs, but they all wore the same uniform now. They all fought for the same cause. The Council thinks this war will be about numbers, she said. They think they can overwhelm us with ships and firepower. They are wrong. She pointed to the star map. This war will be about will. It will be about who wants victory more. The Council has been comfortable for thousands of years. They have forgotten how to struggle. We have never had that luxury. Her officers nodded. They understood. They had all grown up on Earth, on that Category 12 death world. They had all been shaped by hardship. We cannot beat them in a straight fight, Chen continued. So we will not give them one. We will make them bleed for every system. We will strike where they do not expect. We will teach them that humans do not surrender. We do not give up. We survive. She looked out the window at the red desert of Mars. Somewhere out there, an ancient empire was coming to destroy everything she loved. She was not afraid. She was ready. The Council Armada arrived like a silver tide. 10,000 ships from 12 ancient races, the greatest military force assembled in 10,000 years. They called their mission the Final Correction. They believed it would take weeks, at most. The war lasted 3 years. High Arbiter Zalen Voss watched the first battles from the safety of the Citadel. He expected quick victories. He expected the humans to crumble once they saw the true power of the Council. He was disappointed. The humans did not stand and fight. They ran. They hid. They struck from shadows and disappeared before the Council could respond. It was the same strategy they had used against the Third Fleet. But now they were better at it. The Council captured the outer colonies first. Small human settlements on distant moons and asteroids. Each victory was celebrated in the Citadel. But Zelen Voss noticed something troubling. The colonies were empty. The humans had evacuated before the Council arrived, taking everything useful with them. They are giving us rocks and dust, he muttered. Where are their people? The answer came soon enough. As the Council pushed deeper into human space, their supply lines grew longer. Ships needed fuel and ammunition. Soldiers needed food and rest. The Council had never worried about logistics before. Their wars had always been short. This war was not short. Human raiders attacked the supply convoys. Small, fast ships that appeared from nowhere, fired their weapons, and vanished into the darkness. A fuel tanker would explode. An ammunition ship would disappear. Slowly, steadily, the Council's advance began to starve. Find them, Zelen Voss ordered. Destroy these raiders. But finding them was almost impossible. Human ships were small and hard to detect. They hid in asteroid fields and behind moons. They used the gravity of planets to mask their movements. The Council sent hunter fleets to track them down. But the hunters often became the hunted. 6 months into the war, the Scorn suffered their first major defeat. A swarm fleet of 300 ships had been tracking a group of human raiders near a dead star. The humans led them into a trap. The star's gravity well had been seeded with thousands of mines, nuclear weapons, hidden in the darkness, waiting for victims. The Scorn fleet was destroyed in minutes. Not a single ship survived. The Hive Queens screamed for revenge, but their anger turned to fear. They had lost millions of warrior drones. The Scorn did not reproduce quickly. Each loss was felt across the entire hive. For the first time in their history, the Scorn began to question whether this war was worth fighting. The Luminari fell next. Their energy forms made them nearly immortal. They had not experienced death in thousands of years. Then the humans developed weapons that could disrupt their essence. Ships equipped with these weapons began targeting Luminari vessels specifically. They are hunting us, the Luminari representative told the Council. His form flickered with terror. They have found a way to kill beings of pure energy. This should not be possible. Humans find ways. Zelen Voss replied grimly. He had learned that lesson too well. By the end of the first year, the Council had conquered most of human space. But they had not won. The humans had simply retreated to their core worlds, Earth, Mars, Venus, and a handful of other heavily defended systems. The Council fleets surrounded them. But every attempt to break through cost dozens of ships. The humans fought like demons. They used weapons the Council considered barbaric. Kinetic impactors that struck with the force of nuclear bombs. Actual nuclear bombs, deployed without warning or hesitation. Swarms of AI-controlled drones that had no fear and no mercy. Soldiers in armored suits who would charge into enemy ships and fight hand-to-hand in the corridors. Admiral Yara Chen commanded from the front lines. She had been promoted to Fleet Admiral after the first year. Her hair had turned gray from stress, and she walked with a limp from an injury that had nearly killed her. But her eyes were still sharp, and her mind was still calculating. They expected us to break, she told her officers after a particularly bloody battle. They thought we would surrender when we saw their numbers. They were wrong. How much longer can we hold? Someone asked. Chen smiled. It was not a happy smile. As long as it takes. The second year of the war saw the Council alliance begin to crack. The Morvan, giant warriors who had once been eager for battle, had lost 40% of their fleet. They demanded a pause in operations. The Vethkai refused. Arguments erupted in the Citadel. Some races began making secret deals with the humans. Not surrenders, exactly. Informal agreements. The humans would not attack their convoys if they stayed out of certain areas. It was shameful, but it was practical. Xelun Voss tried to hold the alliance together. He gave speeches about honor and unity. He reminded the council of their 40,000 years of history. But history meant nothing to races who were losing their children in a war they did not understand. The third year brought the collapse. It started with the Luminari. They announced they were withdrawing from the war. Their losses had been too great. They retreated to their home systems and refused to respond to council messages. The scorn followed a month later. Without their swarm fleets, the council lost a quarter of its remaining strength. One by one, the ancient races abandoned the alliance. The Morven left. The crystalline Seraph left. Even the proud Vethkai began to fracture. With several major clans refusing to send more ships, Xelun Voss found himself alone. The council that had ruled for 40,000 years was crumbling around him, and the humans were still fighting. Admiral Chen saw her opportunity. For 2 years, she had been conserving strength. Now, with the council divided, she launched her counterattack. Human fleets poured out of the core worlds. They were not the same crude ships that had fought the Third Fleet. 3 years of war had forced humanity to evolve. Their vessels were faster, stronger, deadlier. Their weapons were more precise. Their tactics were more sophisticated. The remaining council forces fell back in confusion. They had spent 3 years on the offensive. They did not know how to defend. Human ships reclaimed the outer colonies in weeks. They pushed deeper into council space, targeting shipyards and supply bases. Then Chen did something unexpected. She stopped. Her fleets had reached the border of the core worlds, the ancient heart of council civilization. She had the strength to push further. She could have attacked the citadel itself. Instead, she sent a message. "This war is over," the message said. "We are not coming to conquer you. We are coming to talk. High Arbiter Xelun Voss, I request a meeting. Not as enemies, as equals." Xelun Voss read the message 100 times. He did not understand. The humans had been fighting for 3 years. They had sacrificed millions of lives. They had every reason to want revenge. Why were they offering peace? He thought about everything he had learned about humans. Their persistence, their adaptability, their short lives that made them treasure every moment. Perhaps this was not mercy. Perhaps this was something else. Perhaps it was wisdom. "I will meet with her," he told his remaining advisors. "Alone. High Arbiter, that is dangerous," Sereth warned. "She cannot be trusted." Xelun Voss looked at his young subordinate. "The humans taught us something in this war. We thought we were invincible. We thought we were gods. They proved us wrong." He stood slowly, his ancient crystal body creaking with age. "Perhaps it is time we learned what else they have to teach." He gave the order to prepare his personal ship. The war was ending. But the hardest part was still to come. The citadel of eternal law had stood for 10,000 years. Its crystal walls had witnessed the rise and fall of empires. Its chambers had hosted the decisions that shaped galactic history. Now, for the first time, human boots walked its ancient floors. High Arbiter Xelun Voss waited in the council chamber. The great hall was empty. The seats of the 12 races stood silent and abandoned. Most of the council members had fled to their homeworlds. Only Xelun Voss remained. He heard footsteps approaching. Slow, steady, confident. The doors opened, and Admiral Yara Chen walked into the chamber. She looked older than the last time he had seen her image. The war had taken its toll. Her face was lined with exhaustion. Her uniform was worn from years of fighting, but her eyes were still sharp. They were the eyes of a survivor. Behind her came 4 human soldiers. They were tall and strong, wearing battle armor that still carried the scars of combat. Their weapons were holstered but ready. They scanned the chamber with the careful attention of predators. "You may leave us," Chen told them. The soldiers hesitated. "Admiral, we cannot leave you alone with him." Chen smiled softly. "The High Arbiter and I need to have a conversation. We will not be interrupted." The soldiers withdrew reluctantly. The doors closed behind them. Chen and Xelun Voss were alone in the great chamber, where the council had ruled for 40,000 years. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply looked at each other. Conqueror and conquered, victor and defeated. 2 leaders who had sent thousands to their deaths. "I have prepared for this moment," Zelun Voss finally said. I have written my surrender speech. I have accepted that the council will fall. I have made peace with the end of everything my people built. Chen nodded slowly. May I sit? The question surprised him. A conqueror did not ask permission. Of course, she walked to one of the empty council seats and sat down heavily. For a moment, she looked less like a victorious admiral and more like a tired old woman. I have been fighting for 3 years, High Arbiter. Before that, I spent 20 years in military service. Before that, I grew up in a world that was always at war with itself. She sighed. I am very tired of fighting. Zelun Voss did not know what to say. He had expected threats. He had expected demands. He had not expected exhaustion. Your fleets surround the citadel, he said. Your soldiers walk my halls. You have won. What happens now? Chen looked up at the crystal ceiling. Light played across her face, painting it in colors that shifted and changed. That depends on you. I do not understand. She leaned forward. When I first met your ambassador, he told me that humanity had 2 choices: submit or be destroyed. Those were the only options the council could imagine. She paused. We imagined a 3rd option. We chose to fight. And you won, Zelun Voss said. We survived, Chen corrected. There is a difference. Millions of my people died in this war. Entire colonies were destroyed. Families were torn apart. Children grew up without parents. Her voice was heavy with grief. We did not want this war. You forced it upon us. Zelun Voss felt something he had not expected. Shame. We believed we were doing the right thing. The Protectorate brought peace to countless worlds. The Protectorate brought submission, Chen replied. You called it peace because no one could fight back. But peace without freedom is just a different kind of prison. They sat in silence. The crystal walls sang their soft songs. Outside, human ships drifted past the windows. Their weapons pointed at the heart of an empire that had ruled for 40,000 years. Why did you stop? Zelun Voss asked. Your fleets could have pushed further. You could have conquered our homeworlds. You could have done to us what we tried to do to you. Chen smiled sadly. Because we have been where you are. We have been the conquerors. We have been the tyrants. For thousands of years, human nations conquered other human nations. We enslaved each other. We committed atrocities that still haunt our history. What changed? We learned. She stood and walked to the center of the chamber. We learned that empires built on fear always fall. We learned that true strength comes not from domination but from cooperation. We learned that the best way to ensure your survival is to make others want you to survive. She turned to face him. The council ruled through fear. You crushed anyone who challenged you. And when a real challenge came, you discovered that fear is a weak foundation. Your allies abandoned you because they feared you, not because they respected you. Zelun Voss could not argue. Everything she said was true. So I am offering you a choice. Chen continued. The same choice your ambassador denied us. You can submit to humanity. We will dismantle the council. We will take control of your worlds. We will rule as you ruled, through force and fear. She paused. Or we can try something different. Different how? Chen reached into her uniform and pulled out a small data crystal. She placed it on the table between them. This is a proposal. A new charter for a new galactic government. Not a council where ancient races rule over younger ones. An assembly where every species has an equal voice. Where decisions are made through consensus, not conquest. Where strength is measured by contribution, not by age. Zelun Voss stared at the crystal. You want to share power with us? After everything we did? I want to build something that lasts, Chen replied. Revenge is satisfying, but it does not create stability. If we crush you today, someone will crush us tomorrow. The cycle never ends. She met his eyes. I am tired of the cycle. Zelun Voss thought about his long life. 3,000 years of watching the council impose its will on the galaxy. 3,000 years of believing that the ancient races were superior. 3,000 years of never questioning whether there might be a better way. Why? He asked. Why show mercy to those who showed you none? Chen's expression softened. Because mercy is not weakness. It takes more strength to offer your hand than to raise your fist. It takes more courage to forgive than to destroy. She gestured at the empty chamber. Your council could not imagine any option besides submission or destruction. Humanity can imagine more. That is our gift. That is our strength. She extended her hand. Not as a conqueror demanding surrender. As an equal offering partnership. Join us, she said. Not as servants, not as subjects. As partners. Help us build something better than either of us could build alone. Zelen Voss looked at her hand. Small, soft, fragile. The hand of a creature who lived for barely a century. The hand of a species that had been traveling the stars for less than 100 years. The hand of a teacher. He reached out and took it. His crystal fingers closed gently around her flesh and bone. You speak of building something that lasts. How can beings who live such short lives think in such long terms? Chen smiled. Because we know we will not see the end of what we start. We plant trees whose shade we will never enjoy. We write stories we will never finish. We dream of futures we will never reach. Her grip tightened. That is what makes us fight so hard for the present. Every moment matters because we have so few of them. Outside the crystal windows, human and council ships hung side by side in the darkness. Former enemies drifting together around the citadel. The first sign of a new order that would take centuries to build. It will not be easy, Zelen Voss said. Many of my people will resist. Many of yours will demand revenge. There will be conflicts and setbacks. There always are, Chen agreed. But we will face them together. And together, we will be stronger than either of us alone. She released his hand and stepped back. I should return to my fleet. There is much work to do. Admiral Chen, Zelen Voss called as she turned to leave. She paused at the door. The council thought we were invincible. We thought we were gods. You proved us wrong. He bowed his head. Thank you. Chen smiled one last time. We did not come to destroy gods, High Arbiter. We came to remind them that they were mortal. And that mortality is not a weakness. It is the source of everything that matters. She walked out of the chamber, leaving Zelen Voss alone with the soft singing of the crystal walls. For the first time in 40,000 years, the Citadel was not a throne of power. It was the birthplace of hope. The galaxy would never be the same.